One of the main issues in the realm of world cinema studies is the undermining of non-Western cinema as purely reactionary to the monopoly of Hollywood. To negate this, Najib proposes the polycentric model of tackling world cinema, claiming that once notions of a single centre, premises and diachronicities are discarded, everything can be put on the world cinema map on equal footing, even Hollywood, which instead of a threat becomes a cinema among others. In this video essay, I will discuss how the outworking of this polycentric model results in what are known as creative peaks, and how these waves rolling across adjacent cultures influence Fernando Meirelle's film City of God. City of God is a 2002 film depicting the horrific true events that took place in Rio de Janeiro's Cidade de Deus favela from the 1960s to 1980s. Nominated for 4 Oscars, its popularity attracted the attention of film audiences and critics worldwide, opening the door of world cinema to many. The theory of creative peaks is important to both the themes and style of City of God. Its influence is drawn not only from Italian Neorealism and Latin American protest cinema, but also from classical Hollywood style, shaping a film characterised by a seemingly paradoxical stylized realism. Perhaps one of the most influential creative peaks in the history of cinema was Italian Neorealism. Born out of bleak post-war Italy, Neorealism brought the troubles and hardships of everyday people to the cinema screen. Filmmakers such as Vittorio De Sica and Roberto Rossellini produced films intended to reflect social reality and to bring about political change in a country ravaged by unemployment and homelessness. Neorealism employed techniques such as using non-actors and on-location shooting in order to add authenticity and a sense of everyday life into their films. Because of the politically charged nature of the films, Neorealism as a cinematic philosophy began to influence filmmakers around the globe, including those in Latin America. Here a similar movement known as Third Cinema began, with films of political protest being made in opposition to the failed promises of modernisation made by the governments of Brazil, Argentina and Mexico. The criteria of these films were not aesthetic but political, adherence to anti-imperialism and one or other form of socialist ideology. Luis Benuel's Los Alvidaros follows a group of homeless youths in Mexico City, its unresolved ending highlighting the desperation and hopelessness of their situation. If cinema could combat this imperialism and testify to the truths of national identity, then it would represent a powerful contribution to the struggle for liberation. City of God shows its influences from Third Cinema through its selection of subject matter. The iconography of the favela's narrow streets encloses the characters inside a web of violence, while the corruption of the state is emphasised throughout. The structure of the film serves to reiterate the never-ending cycle of crime as each generation succumbs to the temptation of seizing power in a lawless society where the lack of modern development means everyone must fend for himself. The themes of City of God, as well as the choice to use non-actors, reflect its influences by the creative peaks of Third Cinema and Neorealism. Despite this focus on realism and the horrors of the favela, City of God deviates from Third Cinema in its style. Orr notes that yes, City of God tells a story about the hopeless, desperate denizens of a drug and violence-riddled slum, but tells a story, and does so with a narrative panache that owes more to Scorsese or Tarantino than to any well-meaning documentarian. If we, as Najib suggests, deem Hollywood as just another creative peak, then it is fair to note its undoubted influence upon City of God. Where Neorealism and Third Cinema opt for open endings, City of God's storytelling relies heavily on narrative coherence and causation. Rocket's voiceover explains characters' backstories and how they contribute to the overarching narrative. The use of flashbacks departs from the realist setting. When Otto betrays Knockout Ned, Meirelle shows us a scene from earlier in the film when Ned murdered the boy's father, as well as Otto's expressed desire for revenge. This clever use of flashback pays off the previous setup, enlightening us as to why that moment was significant. This focus on causation drives the narrative forward and does in fact tell the story in a more stylistic way reminiscent of the aforementioned Hollywood greats.
3 Gläser.
In conclusion, it is fair to say that creative peaks influence individual films from both a thematic and stylistic standpoint. Meirelle's City of God displays its influences of Neorealism, Third Cinema and Hollywood throughout its runtime, and supports Najib's polycentric theory which advocates an inclusive model of a world made of interconnected cinemas.